Today, we're very fortunate to have Bryan Minihan, Chief Technology Officer of Health Decisions. Hey, Bryan, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I understand you're down in the North Carolina area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh,
I've been here about
beautiful.
10 years.
Oh, nice, nice. How's the weather down there today?
It's going to be nice, about 75.
Oh boy, that's wonderful. We're up here in the Northeast, and we're getting a nice fall day, but it is sunny today, so that should make for a pleasant weekend.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah. So, Bryan, one of the things that we're seeing out there is that there is a growing trend around this, I guess, terminology and approach from a software development perspective as it relates to a global agile development process as well as agile development process. I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about your thoughts on that, but more importantly, during your time at Health Decisions, can you talk a little bit about what the primary business is about, and also kind of your general approach to the software development lifecycle?
Sure. Health Decisions is a clinical research organization. Our job is to conduct clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies. We're unique in our industry in that we own our own software. We write a suite of clinical management systems that help people manage the trials better. In my role as the CTO was to run or manage a team of software developers, business analysts, and testers to kind of build this suite and improve it over time. So my approach, having worked in several large companies and also several startups, has been to follow an agile methodology as closely as I can, knowing that every organization has a different agile methodology because of the people on your team. They bring their own skills and disciplines to the process. Health Decisions uses its own kind of custom agile methodology, as most people do.
Okay, great. So I can imagine, and having a lot of experience in the clinical development arena and working with a number of CROs as well as e-clinical providers, as well as really kind of across the continuum from a regulatory and a go-to-market approach. One of the things that kind of strikes me is organizations like yourself. You have a number of, as you mentioned, proprietary technologies, but you're probably also utilizing a number of third-party technologies, and I would imagine that there are a lot of challenges as it relates to making all those applications talk and integrate to each other. And I would imagine your agile approach really is akin to having to deal with those challenges. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. We do. We have several kind of industry-specific technologies, a data collection system from a third-party vendor, but we also combine that with enterprise systems like SharePoint. And so our custom product is comprised of our own custom code plus talking to these data collection systems plus talking to SharePoint portals. So the discipline required for us to manage our process requires understanding all three of those domains and kind of learning how they work together.
Oh wow, that's quite a bit going on there. It sounds like, and one of the things that I can certainly see why an agile approach works. There's also this trend around a waterfall approach. Can you talk a little bit about the waterfall versus the agile approach, and maybe shed a little light on there and clarity around that?
Sure. I came to Health Decisions, and it was actually using a waterfall methodology when I joined. I've worked with that methodology very much in the past. The key difference between waterfall and agile is that waterfall starts with collecting all of your requirements and designing a system on paper upfront, and then launching into this large kind of development process, and then launching into a large testing process. It tends to lean itself towards longer projects, longer deliverables, longer release cycles. Its strength is that it's very good at predicting when you're going to be done with something. Its biggest drawback is that by the time you finished a 6-month or 1-year release cycle, you usually haven't built what people want anymore, because it's just been too long since you designed the system and when you released it. Our agile methodology and the methods that I like to practice comprise of very short release cycles. So we try to get things down to just 1 month, and we release whatever's built, tested, and validated every single month. It diminishes or decreases the anxiety that people hold with these large looming, launches and training cycles that traditional large companies have had in the past.
Wow. Yeah, and I can imagine that not only what you needed to do to support the activities around health decisions, but also I would imagine that that was a ever-evolving process as you're dealing with a number of different clients or sponsors to support their unique needs as well. So, kind of thinking about that a little bit, and given your expertise and extensive experience in this in these approaches, can you share your thoughts on this growing trend around the distributed agile development approach?
Sure. Our challenge when about early last year, we decided to build our own a very large component of our own clinical management system. Our challenge was that we didn't want to balloon our whole team up in size for what was essentially a 1-year project. So we went looking for a partner who could augment our team and actually become part of our process, and also become a longer term kind of embedded contingent of our team. At a cost-effective price, but also they had to be people who were just as skilled at both Agile and technology as we were.
Interesting. So is that kind of you're kind of taking this to a whole nother level as far as distributed agile development, but it sounds like you kind of embarked upon more of a global distributed agile development approach. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. We had faith in our process that we could do this because our process was already pretty well solid. It was very solid to begin with. The biggest hurdle in implementing an agile development process in a regulated setting is the validation component. Every software product that's used by a clinical trial needs to be validated to ensure that it has all of the proper kind of data security elements, that the data is auditable, and that basically it can be archived and shipped along with the study materials. The problem with Agile is that it doesn't tend to lend itself towards heavy documentation. But we had built a process that basically self-documents. As we're going through each of the stories in our release, each of the stories is collecting its own validation documentation. So we already had that in place before we went looking for a global partner. And we knew that if we could find a partner that could use that same process, then we would, in effect, have a self-documented global Agile process.
So, now, given that, we are talking about this distributed global agile development approach and the trends that we're starting to see, I know that you work with CoreValue Solutions. Can you talk a little bit about how CoreValue assisted you in this process?
Sure. So, the first hurdle we got over with CoreValue was we wanted to make sure their team was technically skilled enough to do the work that we demanded of them. And we found that very, very quickly, both meeting the team members and talking to Igor. The CoreValue team is at least on par, if not better than the team that I have, but they have a larger pool to draw from. They came to us with experience with Agile methodologies of various kinds, and in talking to them and discussing how our process worked, we learned that they were going to be able to meet our needs. Now, they were willing and able to adjust their processes to meet ours. And I need to say that I think we had the same feeling, and that was necessary to make this partnership work.
Right.
Both of us had to be willing to shift a little bit in order to make it work.
Right. Now, I would imagine, knowing a little bit about CoreValue, I would imagine, given their experience as opposed to other organizations, their experience with obviously an agile and a distributed approach, but also specifically with a lot of their expertise and understanding around various disciplines, and more specifically within relative domains. And I know they have done a lot of work in the clinical development arena. So you mentioned validations and SOPs and so forth. I would imagine that probably married up very nicely with your very structured approach, which I would think allowed you to have the teams blend and mesh very nicely. Is that a fair assessment?
It did. I think CoreValue's experience in this domain drastically reduced the ramp-up time, both in just establishing a contract and an agreement for how we'd work together. But as soon as the project started, there were whole volumes of information we did not have to kind of communicate with them because they already knew. And in fact, they helped us a little bit shift our validation plan so to meet their experience. They kind of had knowledge of things in this specific software that we weren't aware of, and they helped us. It made the startup very, very short.
Oh, nice, nice. So, I mean, it sounds like you also were able to gain a number of improvements and efficiencies by leveraging a global partner that was very versed in this global distributed agile development process that synced up with a lot of the things that you guys were kind of well on your way down the path with. Can you talk a little bit about some of those improvements and efficiencies? Are there any that come to mind that that you can share with the group here?
Sure. Their development team, like I said, we spent a week just visiting with the team, but well before the project started. We had this kind of 1 month ramp up cycle, and their team had already built several of the systems, several versions of the system we were trying to build. So what they brought to our team was several different approaches for very big problems in the system that we're building. And it enabled all of us to have a discussion about how we wanted to do it. And it was nice because they were colleagues. We argued, we had discussions that kind of got out of hand sometimes, but they were all collegial. It was very much a collaborative effort. We all came together and came up with solutions. And throughout the project, it's been that way ever since. They're comfortable speaking their mind to us, and we feel the same with them.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, it's always nice when you have people that are passionate and teams that are focused on achieving a specific task and understand what the end game is and are working together cohesively and in a spirited fashion. And it sounds like you had a little bit of that as well, right?
Yeah, it was very good. We enjoyed working with the team very much.
Oh, that's great. So, I can imagine there are a lot of organizations that are out there, struggling with how to meet some very difficult timelines, dealing with how do we identify and work with an organization, and also bringing folks in with the specific technical resources, as well as very versed in these new development processes. Are there any Is there any advice you can give folks that are going down this path and giving some guidance to them based on your experience?
Yes, a couple different things come to mind. One of which is, like I said before, CoreValue came to us with a willingness to adjust their processes to meet our needs, but I don't think our partnership would work if we hadn't had the same attitude. If we had walked in and said, "You're going to follow our process, and I don't care what you've done before," I don't think this would have worked at all. The second thing I think is that we have constant communication with the team. I have dedicated managers who work both with the Malco's team and the CoreValue team and our own team. And in doing that kind of at least daily or weekly communication, we're constantly adjusting our own process. So even though we started with a solid process, we came up with a better one working together. Every week and every month, we're shifting it a little bit. So one example would be that we measure the velocity of our testing cycle very, very accurately and down to the person. So we know who's doing the most testing, who's doing the least testing. And by watching those numbers every week, we've been able to kind of work with the CoreValue team to get people's numbers up and find out where bottlenecks are and who's holding things up. So it's constant communication and plus a willingness to change, I think, are the two biggest things that have helped us succeed.
Oh, great. Well, what are your plans going forward with future development efforts? It sounds like you have adopted and made it a part of the process and ingrained it as part of your culture, this global agile development approach. What are your plans going forward for future development efforts, and also partnership arrangements with providers like CoreValue and others?
Sure. we've established this trust over the last several months with CoreValue in building this system. We're just about ready to launch the first version of it, and then moving very quickly into a kind of a second phase release. Because of the trust that we built with them, and they already know our processes, we're hoping that to continue a long-term arrangement with the group to keep them building. This system is kind of a monolithic project. But it's going to evolve over time. It's not just we're done and then we shut it down and we move it on.
Right.
We're planning on keeping the team around to make sure that they stay with us, and we'll be branching into mobile different versions of the system.
Yeah.
Our customers are never going to stop asking for things, and I don't think Malcolm's or CoreValue is ever going to stop helping.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you brought the mobile piece up, and obviously, I know your time is very sensitive, and we are very appreciative of it, but I would love to have an opportunity to talk to you in the future about kind of your thoughts on, mobile applications and how those are impacting things that you're doing, but also connectivity to solutions and so forth. But for now, hey, Bryan, I want to thank you for your time and sharing your experience as it relates to this distributed global agile development process.
Thank you, Michael. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.